We're all searching for it, right? That feeling of happiness, like it's a this hidden treasure we're all on a quest to find.
Yeah.
But what if we've been looking in all the wrong places?
Yeah.
There's some really interesting research coming out of Harvard that suggests happiness isn't something you just stumble upon, it's something you build.
I love that. It's such an important shift in perspective.
Uh,
We've thought about it for so long as, if we just get the right job or meet the right person or have enough money, then we'll finally be happy. But the research is showing us something quite different.
Yeah, and in this deep dive, we're giving you the tools to do just that. We're going to explore 5 science-backed tools, daily habits that you can use to actually rewire your brain for more happiness.
And this isn't just positive thinking or wishful thinking. This comes from a deep exploration into the science of happiness and the idea that we actually have a lot more control than we think. We're looking at what we're calling the legacy of mindset.
Okay, so how do we even begin to think about rewiring our brains for happiness?
Well, it helps to understand that we each have a sort of natural happiness baseline. It's almost like a thermostat setting.
Okay.
Some people just naturally tend to be a little bit happier than others.
Yeah.
And this is influenced by a combination of our genetics and the habits we've already developed.
So that's why some people just seem to bounce back more easily from
Right.
setbacks.
Exactly.
But does that mean we're just stuck at a certain level of happiness?
Not at all. And this is where it gets really exciting. You see, our brains have this incredible ability called neuroplasticity.
Okay.
So it's not that your brain is just this fixed thing. It's constantly changing and adapting and forming new connections throughout your life.
So we can actually change the way our brains are wired.
Yes, you can think of it like carving new mental grooves.
Wow. So how does that apply to happiness?
Well, when you look at the research about all the different things that contribute to happiness, it breaks down into 3 main categories.
Okay.
Around 50% of our happiness level is determined by our genes. So that's the stuff we inherit from our parents.
Okay, so half of it is pre-programmed. What about the rest?
Well, then only about 10% is determined by our life circumstances.
Wait, just 10%? That's way less than I would have guessed. We spend so much time striving for that perfect job or the perfect house, thinking it'll make all the difference.
Right. But the research really highlights that while those things might give us a temporary boost, they don't have a huge long-term impact on our overall happiness.
Okay, so if it's not our genes or our circumstances, then what's the missing piece?
Well, the most exciting part is that a full 40% of our happiness is determined by our intentional activities. It's those things we do every day that are actually within our control.
40%, that's huge. So the little things we do consistently can actually have a much bigger impact on our happiness than we realize.
Yes, exactly. And yet so many of us are conditioned to believe that happiness is something that just happens to us. It's this idea that we have to achieve something or get lucky in order to be happy.
But we actually have the power to create it ourselves.
Mhm.
I love that. Okay, so let's talk about what we can actually do. What are some of those daily habits that can make a real difference?
Let's start with something that might sound simple, but it has incredibly powerful effects, and that's gratitude.
Gratitude. We hear about it a lot, but how does it actually work?
Well, research has shown that gratitude can literally change your brain chemistry. It increases the production of serotonin, which is a key neurotransmitter involved in feelings of happiness and well-being. In fact, studies from UC Davis have shown that practicing gratitude can be even more effective than some antidepressants.
Wow. But I've always thought of gratitude as just, saying thank you. What's the right way to practice gratitude so it actually has that kind of impact?
Well, researchers suggest what we call the gratitude triple.
The gratitude triple. Okay, I'm intrigued.
So it's 3 parts, and it's designed to engage your brain in a very specific way. The first part is to start each morning by actively thinking about 3 specific things you're grateful for. And the key here is to be really specific.
So instead of just saying, I'm grateful for my family, I might say, I'm grateful for my sister's infectious laugh.
Exactly. The more specific you are, the more it activates the neural pathways associated with positive emotions.
Got it. So specific gratitude in the morning. What's the second part of the triple?
In the evening, before you go to sleep, take a few minutes to actually write down one gratitude moment from your day. Don't just list it. Really try to relive that moment in your mind. Savor it and notice all the positive emotions associated with it.
Okay, so being present with that feeling. And what's the third part?
The third part is a weekly practice. Once a week, make an effort to express gratitude to someone directly. This could be through a text or a call or even a handwritten letter.
I like that. So it's not just an internal practice, it's about expressing it outwardly as well.
Right.
So how does doing all of this actually change our brains?
Well, when you practice gratitude in this way, it activates multiple areas of the brain. It engages the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that's involved in decision-making and planning.
Right.
But it also activates the limbic system, which is the emotional center of the brain. So you're basically strengthening the connections between those two areas.
Okay, so we're creating stronger pathways for positive emotions. I love that. So that's the gratitude triple. What's the second habit in our happiness toolkit?
The second habit is one we often associate with physical health, but it's incredibly important for our mental health as well, and that's exercise.
Exercise. We all know it's good for us, but what's the connection to happiness?
Well, exercise is like fertilizer for the brain. When you get your heart rate up, even for just a short period of time, your brain releases a protein called BDNF. That stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
BDNF. Okay, what does that do?
BDNF helps to grow new brain cells, and it helps to flush out stress hormones, and it triggers the release of endorphins.
So those feel-good chemicals? So it's not just that you feel good right after you exercise. There are actual long-term benefits for your brain.
Absolutely. And the best part is you don't have to do hours and hours of strenuous exercise to get these benefits. Even just 20 minutes a day can make a big difference.
Okay, 20 minutes, I can do that. Anything else that can boost the benefits of exercise?
Yes. Some interesting research out of Stanford in 2022 actually found that when people exercise outdoors in nature, they get an even bigger mood boost, up to 200% more than exercising indoors. So getting out in nature can be a great way to amplify the effects.
Okay. So 20 minutes of exercise, ideally outside. I'm liking this happiness plan. What's the third habit we should be focusing on?
The third habit focuses on one of our most basic human needs, and that's social connection.
We all know how good it feels to connect with others, but why is that so important for happiness?
Well, one of the longest studies ever conducted on human happiness, the Harvard Study of Adult Development, found that the single biggest predictor of happiness and longevity is the quality of our relationships.
So it's not just about having lots of friends on Facebook.
Right. It's about having deep, meaningful connections with people who we can really be ourselves with.
Quality over quantity. So how do we go about strengthening those connections?
The research suggests focusing on two types of interactions. First, try to have at least 2 deep conversations each week.
What exactly do you mean by deep?
Well, conversations that go beyond small talk, talking about things that really matter to you and really listening to the other person.
Okay, 2 deep conversations a week. Got it. And what's the other type of interaction?
The second thing is to aim for at least 5 micro moments of connection each day.
What are micro moments?
They're those small, seemingly insignificant interactions that can actually make a big difference.
Like what?
Like making eye contact and smiling at the barista when you get your coffee, or sharing a quick joke with a colleague at work, or sending a quick text message to a friend.
Okay. I can see how those little moments could add up over time.
They really do. And it's because our brains are wired for connection. In fact, research has shown that loneliness can actually activate the same pain pathways in the brain as physical pain.
Wow. Okay, so feeling connected is really essential for our well-being. So we've got gratitude exercise and social connection. What's habit number 4?
Habit number 4 is all about tapping into a state of intense focus and enjoyment called flow.
Flow states. I've
Right.
heard of those. It's like when you're so absorbed in something that you lose track of time.
Exactly. You're completely in the zone. And flow states are like happiness amplifiers. When you're in a state of flow, you're so engaged in what you're doing that everything else fades away and you feel this deep sense of satisfaction.
It sounds amazing. Can you actually make yourself get into a flow state?
Yes, absolutely. It's something you can cultivate.
No.
Well, there are a few key things you can do. First, you need to choose an activity that's challenging enough to keep you engaged, but not so challenging that it becomes overwhelming. You want to find that sweet spot where you're stretching your abilities, but you're not feeling frustrated.
Okay, so find the right challenge level. What else?
The second thing is to eliminate distractions. Flow requires deep focus, so you want to minimize interruptions as much as possible. Turn off your phone, put on some noise-canceling headphones if you need to. Really create a space where you can be completely present with the task at hand.
Got it. So find the right challenge level and eliminate distractions. Anything else?
The third thing is to set clear micro goals. Having those smaller, achievable goals within the larger task can help you stay motivated and maintain your focus.
Okay, so choose the right challenge, eliminate distractions, and set micro goals. Makes sense. Who are some of the people who really utilize flow states?
You see it a lot with artists and athletes and musicians, but also entrepreneurs and anyone who's really passionate about what they do. Flow states are a great way to enhance performance and boost creativity.
Interesting. So it's not just about feeling good, it can actually help you be more productive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And from a neuroscience perspective, what's happening during flow is that your brain is releasing a whole cocktail of happiness chemicals like dopamine, anandamide, and endorphins.
Wow. Nature's happiness cocktail. No, I love that. Okay, so that's habit number 4. What's the final habit in our happiness toolkit?
The final habit focuses on the power of giving back.
Altruism.
Altruism. So helping others. It seems kind of counterintuitive that focusing on others would actually make us happier.
I know, but it really does.
Wow.
When we help others, our brains release oxytocin, which is often called the love hormone. It also releases endorphins.
So we get a chemical reward for being kind.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that even small acts of kindness can have a big impact on our happiness.
So we don't have to go out and volunteer for hours every week.
No, it can be things like holding the door open for someone offering to help a colleague with a project or donating a small amount to a charity.
Those little things really do make you feel good.
They do, and the key is to make it a habit to look for opportunities to help others throughout your day. Is there a specific way to practice altruism that's particularly effective?
Well, some research suggests that anonymous giving can be especially powerful.
Why is that?
Because when you give anonymously, there's no expectation of recognition or reward. It's just a pure act of giving. And that seems to activate the reward centers in the brain even more strongly. But really, any act of kindness, big or small, can make a difference.
It's like we're actually changing our brains by being kind to others.
Exactly. You can think of it as neural alchemy.
I love that. So we've covered the 5 daily habits, but even if we're actively working on building these habits, there are still some things that can sabotage our efforts.
Yes, there are certain happiness traps that we can fall into.
Okay, what's the first trap?
The first trap is comparison. Especially in this age of social media, it's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others and feeling like we don't measure up.
It's like everyone else is living this perfect life.
Right. And research has shown that spending time on social media can actually have a negative impact on our mood. There was a study from MIT in 2023 that found that even just browsing Instagram for a few minutes can lead to a significant decrease in happiness levels for a lot of people.
Wow, I can definitely see how that could happen. Okay, so comparison is the first trap. What's the second one?
The second trap is rumination.
Rumination. What does that mean?
It's that tendency to dwell on negative thoughts and experiences, replaying them over and over in our minds.
Yes, I do that all the time.
We all do it from time to time. But when it becomes a habit, it can really keep us stuck in a cycle of unhappiness.
So how do we stop ruminating?
Well, that brings us to another happiness trap, which is trying to suppress negative thoughts.
Okay.
While it's great to focus on the positive, trying to ignore or suppress negative emotions can actually backfire. It's important to acknowledge and process those feelings in a healthy way.
So it's not about pretending to be happy all the time.
Right. It's about accepting that negative emotions are a normal part of life and learning how to manage them effectively.
How do we do that?
Well, research has shown that even just a few minutes of journaling about our struggles can significantly reduce their emotional impact. There was a study that found that spending just 7 minutes journaling about a negative experience reduced its emotional intensity by 40%.
Wow. So journaling can be a really effective way to process those emotions and move on.
Yes, it allows us to get those thoughts and feelings out of our heads and onto paper. And once they're out there, we can start to see them more objectively and let go of them.
This is so helpful. So we've learned about the 5 daily habits we can use to build happiness and the 3 traps to watch out for. So what's the best way for our listeners to actually start putting all of this into practice?
Well, we have a challenge for you. We call it the 30-Day Happiness Builder. Pick 3 of the 5 habits that we talked about and commit to practicing them every day for the next 30 days.
A 30-day challenge. I love it. What can people expect if they do this?
Well, it takes about 21 days to start forming new neural pathways in the brain. So by the end of those 30 days, you should start to see some noticeable shifts in your overall level of happiness.
That's great. And is there a way our listeners can share their experiences with this challenge?
Yes, we'd love to hear from you. Share your #1 takeaway from this deep dive in the comments section.
Yes, let's get a conversation going and create a little ripple effect of happiness. So as we wrap up,
Just remember, happiness is not something that happens to us. It's something we create. It's a skill that we can learn and develop.
absolutely. So until next time, choose growth, choose gratitude, and choose joy.